We've just had the first line manager in our office, and we have done a coaching session with them. We have looked at developmental areas where they need to improve, and you have sent them back with an action plan. Now we need to make sure that they are actually implementing what we have spoken about. So you are going to manage and monitor results. So over here, we're going to recap on the task that was required. We're going to congratulate them on what was handled well. Okay. We comment on those aspects that were not handled correctly and indicate what should have been achieved. Then we ask the line manager to comment about any difficulties experienced. We give gentle guidance and encouragement where necessary. And the last thing is reset the task if appropriate. If there's been no forward momentum on their task, well, then we've got to start from the beginning again. Maybe it was the clarity of the message that wasn't strong enough. Maybe it was the training that wasn't giving effective results. Maybe there was a breakdown in communication between the mentor and the person being coached. So we need to constantly hear what's actually going on and then maybe try a different approach. Once you've tried two or three approaches and nothing is working, well, then we need to ask some serious questions. So there is something which is known as a rating scale where we need to say, okay, so these are the things that you were being held accountable for. How well did you do it? And so one of the most used indexes are things like a rating scale like this. So you'll see number one is an unacceptable performance. So you don't want to be scoring number one. But number five is outstanding performance. And that's if you walk on water and you are able to do miracles, you get fives. So normally people are somewhere between 2 and 4 in terms of how capable they are within that key responsibility area. So you've got to decide when you walk with your first line manager, the person that you are managing, and you've got to decide where do they fall on that rating scale. And then you add all the KRAs, and you have obviously got a performance rating, and then you see how well they are performing in total. How well are they actually doing their full job function? So that's one of the rating scales that can be used. If you don't agree, so in other words, they come to you and say, this is what performance measure we should be held to, you disagree, well, then you're going to get to a point of a stalemate and then you need to negotiate. So there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of when you negotiate. The first thing is that you have to go through the stages. There's a stage of preparation, then a stage of discussion, then you got to clarify the goals. Okay, so in other words, what are you being held to? What is the management's objectives and goals? And you need to make sure that it's filtering down. Then you negotiate towards a win-win situation. Ultimately, you don't want anyone to be a loser out of this situation. You always negotiate for the win-win. Hopefully, you find some kind of agreement, okay, some kind of middle ground or compromise, and that hopefully will also be a win-win. And then right at the end, you have an implementation of the course of action. So now you've negotiated, you've come to some kind of settlement, and then you decide on a path forward. Sometimes you do hit a problem and you create conflict. Now, conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict is often a very healthy way of expressing two different sets of goals. And so, if you accept the conflict and you address the conflict and you work with the conflict, it actually can be very positive. So let's take a look. If it turns into conflict, we need to accept that there will always be conflict. Don't avoid conflict. When there is conflict, stay calm, communicate with reason. Don't get emotional. Look at both sides of the stories, deal with facts and figures, don't deal with personalities. Document conflict areas. So you make sure that you write it down, you get some other people's advice, but document it where there are areas of conflict, and then resolve conflict constructively. You want everyone to walk away without having been degraded or feel like they've lost some kind of war. You really want to have it constructive that is actually going to lead us to a solution and not to a big problem. And as I said, conflict can also be very positive. It can help to build relationships. It often allows us to find a certain direction that both parties can move in. So conflict is not a bad thing. Okay, so moving forward, you got to agree on corrective actions. So if this person is not performing to the standards that you want, you've got to actually start to say, okay, so if you don't if you continue in this path, what are the things that we need to be aware of? These are the possibilities, these are the consequences that you could be facing if you aren't going to achieve. Okay, so agree on the corrective actions and then take follow up actions. So remember that weekly or monthly, you're going to be sitting with them and saying, okay, so how's it going? Where are you moving towards? Have you done the things that we have asked you to do? So that's follow-up actions. Formative section 4.4 is the next thing that you're going to deal with. And so this is what they ask. Consider the importance of giving positive feedback. So remember, that's recognition, reward. Those are the things where people have done the right things, that their behavior is being praised. So remember those times. Discuss instances where it has been difficult for you to give positive feedback, as well as instances where you have received negative feedback. Share your experiences and give examples. So remember, when has it been hard to give positive feedback, and when have you received negative feedback, and how did you feel about it? Tell me about those experiences. Tell me about those examples of times where those two things have happened. Then you are going to go and do your value test. Okay, so formative 4.4. All right, you're going to be sitting and doing that. Again, engage with your fellow teammates or classmates through WhatsApp, through a telephone call. Maybe by this stage, you're actually sitting close to each other, you're talking to each other, but have this discussion and jot down your notes in the section provided. And then when you've done that, then you're going to complete your value test, those 5 questions on coaching. All right, I'm going to give you guys 25 minutes to do that, and then come back to the next video where we're going to give you the answers to your value test and then your final summative assessment.